Okay, two questions. You ever get sick from raw eggs?
Never.
Okay, me neither. Actually, that's not true. I got sick from eating raw eggs once. And it was when I was living in Seattle and I found a dozen eggs in a friend's refrigerator and I had no idea how long they'd been there, maybe 6 months, 8 months. And I was like in residency and I thought, I'm going to eat these. So I ate the raw egg yolks and I puked in the middle of the night. That's the only time I've ever gotten sick from raw eggs. And you've never gotten sick from raw eggs. Okay. So these raw
And
eggs.
I'm convinced that I'm eating salmonella or E. coli or whatever it is. Like I'm convinced that it's on there. We're just inoculated. I mean, because I'm sure you've also had a handful a day, probably for years. And it's same thing for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I've been eating raw eggs every single day. And now when we get it from the farm, from Liver King Ranch, we don't clean them. I mean, there's poop all over them, and we just break them and we eat them. So I'm convinced we're getting exposed to it every day. We've just slowly gotten exposed to it and we can handle it now.
I think it's a great point. Every once in a while, when I eat ground beef and I eat my hamburgers, probably like you eat your hamburgers, pretty rare in the middle. Every once in a while, when I eat ground beef, I get this wave of nausea and I think, oh shit. And then it passes in like 3 or 4 minutes. And in retrospect, I think that was probably E. coli, Campylobacter, or salmonella that my body was like, what the hell is this? I get nauseous. I don't puke. I've never puked, but every once in a while I get something funky and your body just deals with it and you move on. And the same thing with eggs. I've probably eaten 15,000 raw egg yolks. That number is not hyperbole in my life. I think you've probably eaten 45,000 raw egg yolks in your life if you're doing 12 a day, Yeah. So you think that like humans are much more resilient than we've been led to believe. Don't you think so?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I always say, every once in a while I get people that are like, hey, aren't you worried about salmonella? And I'm like, Liver King? Worried about salmonella? Salmonella should be worried about Liver King. People worry about things in a way that they make themselves sick, right? And if it's something that exists in nature, if it's something that we've been doing for hundreds of thousands, even millions of years, we've designed a way to deal with it. And some people can say, oh, well, that way is fire. But to have the ability to create fire at will hasn't always been the case. And even today, modern day primitive culture tribes still always incorporate some raw foods, right? So we always try and do the same as well. And so I'm not convinced that you got to do everything cooked or everything raw, but I do think you should do both. And so we figured this out. When I say we figured it out, it's not like in our lifetime we figured it out, right? The species has figured this out. So yeah, I think it's a whole lot to do with nothing when people are worried about, aren't you going to get sick? It's just a social norm that what we've been fed, and people are getting themselves sick worrying about it.
And I think that there's this whole hygiene hypothesis argument on the backside saying maybe we're too clean, like maybe we should let our kids play in the dirt. Maybe we should let our kids, fall down and skin their knee. Maybe we should let our kids eat some raw meat or eat some undercooked meat or, get sick every once in a while. Maybe we're all meant to get food poisoning. It's not pleasant for anyone. I've had it in the past, but it's pretty rare every once in a while. And humans are pretty resilient.